I call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's May 16th, 2024. We're in the Aldermatic Chamber and it's 7 p.m. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Tim Senate.
Here.
Alderman Derek Tebow is here. Alderman John Sullivan.
Here.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
Here.
Alderman at Large Lori Wilshire.
Here.
Alderman at Large Michael B. O'Brien, Vice Chair. Alderman Richard A. Dowd, Chairman.
Present.
We have 6 out of 7.
Also, other members.
And also in attendance, we have Matthew DeFava, Police Captain, Dan Healy, City Clerk, Jennifer McCormick, Library Director, Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director, Jill Stansfield, Parking Manager. I see also COO Tim Cummings, and for the Mayor's Office, Megan Kelly. We also have our CHO, Bobby Bagley, and CFO John Griffin, or former CFO John Griffin. I don't know.
Yeah.
Still CFO.
Okay. Communications.
We have communication from Len Fournier, Superintendent Woodlawn Pinewood Cemeteries, regarding FY 2025 operating budget. We also have from Kenneth J. Lennox, Superintendent, the Edgewood Cemetery, regarding the FY 2025 operating budget. From Robert Mack, Welfare Officer, regarding the Welfare Administration and General Assistance budget changes for FY 2025. Also from Stephen A. Bolton, Corporation Counsel, regarding the Legal Department budget. And finally from Donna L. Graham, Legislative Affairs Manager, regarding the Board of Aldermen FY 2025 budget.
Okay. There being no objection, I'll accept the communications and place them on file. And just to relate that those groups aren't appearing before us. They've sent us discussions of their budget because normally there's not much in there they can change. Also, if there's no objection, I'd like to accept the memos that I put on your desk this evening, accept them and authorize the procedures that were in them. Okay, very good. Unfinished business,
There's none.
new business resolutions.
I'd like to make a motion for R-24-049, approving the cost items of sidebar agreements between the National Board of Police Commissioners and the 5 National Police Department unions regarding a police department recruiting incentive.
Okay. Yeah, I should say, introduce yourself and give us an overview of the legislation.
Yes, sir. Hello, my name is Matt DeFavre. I'm the captain of the Professional Standards Bureau at the Police Department. I appreciate all of you allowing me to speak on behalf of the recruiting incentive and want to thank you for your time and consideration. As captain of the Professional Standards Bureau, I oversee the department's recruiting, hiring, and training. Law enforcement agencies across the nation are experiencing a recruiting and retention crisis. This line of work has only become more challenging and difficult due to polarizing national events and debates in recent years. In Nashua, we are down 21 officers and have multiple vacant civilian support positions. These reduced staffing levels affect forced overtime, department morale, and the well-being of our employees. One would not realize these reduced staffing issues as our professional and hard-working employees step up every day, resulting in Nashua being one of the safest cities in the country year after year and maintaining its advanced CLEAR accreditation. In 2019, we initiated a recruiting incentive for our employees who refer potential candidates for hire, offering these employees $500. This incentive requires employees to refer potential candidates and introduce them to members of the Professional Standards Bureau for hiring. If the candidate is ultimately hired, the employee is paid the incentive. Several law enforcement agencies and private organizations utilize these employee-based referral and recruiting incentives to assist with the hiring process. These incentives serve as a force multiplier, allowing us to reach more candidates. We're proposing this incentive to be increased to $1,500 and will come from within our existing budget. This incentive has successfully brought us qualified candidates with the hiring of 4 officers in fiscal year '23 and 8 officers within fiscal year '24. This incentive assists with employee retention and satisfaction, rewarding employees for their investment in the process. This incentive also increases the quality of our hires, as proven and vetted existing employees demonstrate that they're willing to refer like-minded individuals of sound character. Additionally, this process fosters a better work culture and environment. Having our employees actively engaged in our recruiting process saves time and money, as well as displaying the positive reputation and image to others within the field of law enforcement. The greatest advantage of this incentive allows Nashua to recruit certified officers. Many officers know other certified officers from New Hampshire and beyond. These certified officers make an immediate impact and decrease the onboarding time, requiring less associated money and training. These certified officers bring prior law enforcement experience and diversify the quality of our workforce. I believe this increase will greatly assist in our recruiting and retention crisis, as well as help us remain at the forefront of premier law enforcement agencies within New England. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for, yes?
I don't have questions, but I have a comment. We need to do whatever we can do to hire police officers in this city. We know there's a shortage nationwide. What I care about is what goes on right here, and I think this is money well spent. So thank you for bringing that
Thank you.
legislation forward.
Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you very much. To that point, I was thinking the other day, I think it would be worth the city's time. I know we've put together ad hoc bonding committees and other ad hoc committees. I think it might be a good idea to pull some brains together in the city and start brainstorming ways on how to get creative and think outside of the box on how to recruit more people. Love to see that happen. I just want to put that out there.
Okay. I would have that discussion with the mayor, since I'm sure he'd be very interested. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I don't disagree with Alderman Sullivan's point. The only thing I would say to that is I think Chief Rourke is probably doing all kinds of different things to try to figure out a way to do this. I know it's a problem everywhere. I've heard some politicians recently say, oh, we're going to make sure we hire enough police, and I just want to say, okay, how? Tell us now. I don't need to wait till November. We need to hire police right now, right? And we want to get back up to staff so we can make sure our city's safe. And so I think this is one of the ways, and hopefully we'll continue to get different ways and different things that we can do to help you guys, staff up properly. But I don't disagree with what Alderman Sullivan said. If there's other ways that creative people can come up with stuff, why not?
Any other questions? No, I've had quite a few discussions with the chief and the deputies, and this is something that can really help the department with their hiring. So I recommend we pass it. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, did we pass over public comment?
There's none on the agenda.
It's not on, that's why I didn't read it. I didn't see it on the agenda.
Well, it's on mine.
It was,
It wasn't on
the
this
first one was supposed to be on there.
Oh, yes, roll call, then public comment.
It wasn't on this one, the one I
Yeah,
had, so.
so if there's any members of the public that would like to speak now, there'll be one public comment period this evening on anything that's currently before us this evening.
Is there public comment at the end?
No.
Oh. Well, it's on here. I don't
Yeah, we just
understand.
voted to take it off for all our budget meetings for FY '25 budget.
You voted to take it off,
Yes,
even at the beginning?
yes.
Why
Not at the
would-
beginning, no, no. Not at the beginning. Should be on at the beginning to discuss anything relative to the budget. But the
Okay.
second one is not for the committee meetings.
Okay. Well, since you're going over these, you know what, I wanted to come to these meetings to express some of my questions that I'm looking for answers to, for the sake of making it shorter when we have the public hearing in June, that I'm not standing up asking questions that I could have answered in another meeting. So my hope of coming here was to make you apprised of the information I'm interested in so that you could perhaps get some answers to those questions.
Just point of order, and I stopped it, so it's not continuing on when I asked this. Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. So since we're covering, I see the departments we're covering. Within the legal department, it looks like they're not here. They submitted a memo because there aren't much changes made. But I would like maybe the CFO or somebody to address the contingency fund and the use of the consultants used to do abatement work being folded into that that money. I think it's a revolving fund, in and out. It doesn't have a beginning and end balance. It's not handled that way by other municipalities, and I don't think it's proper to put the consultants used for abatements in there. And I would like to see that moved into the legal budget. Also, I would like to see the city clerk's office pick up the right-to-know administrator, Gary Parent's position, and move that into the city clerk's office. I don't think, I've addressed this before, but I don't understand why a right-to-know administrator is in an economic development office behind a locked door with no sign or access to them. There is no municipality I have found, if they have a position, a records administrator or an archivist who is located anywhere but the city clerk's office, in an area where the public can come in and talk to that individual about any record matter that they want to speak to. We are working in a very counterproductive manner regarding our right-to-know issues and our right-to-know administrator. There's been a lot of presentations and talk about the expenses, and I think the board should be more proactive about stepping up and asking the administration to control these expenses and to set these positions up in a way that they are productive for the public and the city as well. Regarding the library for future projects, I would like to know, I know the mayor discussed the use of a New Markets tax credit to do their renovations or their upgrades. There's that $30 million project. I'd like to know if that's even possible when there's an outstanding lawsuit having to do with a New Market tax credit. And then,
30 seconds.
okay, let me go with that for now. Economic development has many offices in it, and I think you should address how we have the public accessing those offices where there are a lot of records in those offices, but they're not really open to the public. What can be done to meet RSA 91A, where offices that are heavily record loaded meet compliance with the law, that they are open and available to the public during normal business hours. Thank you.
So any questions that come in via public comment to our meetings or anything that comes in writing, we'll attempt to get it answered and have some type of response as we go along.
But this is your last public input, right?
No, tonight,
Okay, but everyone will have one at the beginning?
yes. Every meeting's different. Okay.
All right, I'd like to make a motion for R-24-057 relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget for the city of Nashua, general enterprise, special revenue, and grant funds.
Okay, before we start reviewing, every one of these meetings will take this off the table. We introduced it tonight. We'll take it off the table and put it on the table at the end of this meeting, and then bring it up the next meeting, so that we will discuss that until we have our final wrap-ups and pass it, the final Board of Aldermen budget.
Point of order? I
Yes.
don't think we actually made a motion. There was no recommendation of final passage or anything. It's not in front of us yet.
Didn't you see?
I said I'd like to make a motion to.
Oh, for final passage
Yeah.
of,
You didn't
yeah.
say anything.
I mean, I can say it again.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we.
Yeah,
have it
yeah, I'd
in
like to
front
make a
of us.
motion for final passage of R-24-057 relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget for the city of Nashua, general, enterprise, special revenue, and grant funds.
Okay, so it's now on the table. Now, this evening and going forward at the future meetings, when the departments come up, you don't need to go into detail about what the departments do. It's in detail in the budget book this year. It's also, as Alderman, we should know what you do. So, questions may come up relative to staffing, adds or subtracts, and also, we'd like to know what's changed in your budget, what's gone down, what's gone up, anything added. So, that's the type of things that we want to discuss with you. I think I covered all of that, right? Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so the first item, first department is the mayor's office. You can go up and sit down.
Can we get the page numbers, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, it's page, mayor's office is on page 30. Yes, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Megan Karen, Chief of Staff. As you can see, our budget's pretty straightforward. We're also under budget from last year, so as far as I'm concerned, I think my job here is done. But there were two lines that I'd like to call attention to. The first is 51,100, wages full-time. You can see that we're down by about 10,000 from last year. That's because last year we had 5 positions, including the mayor. I accepted the position of chief of staff last June, and eventually we elected not to fill the position. We felt like having 3 staff members and the mayor was sufficient. So the next line is 51,403, which is our line for interns. Last year, we allocated 1,100. We were able to use some existing salary money. This year, we budgeted appropriately for $10,000 for 7 to 8 interns. The mayor feels very strongly about giving high schoolers an opportunity to be exposed to what we do for our city and hopefully pique their interest in public service. So we're looking forward to ramping that up again. Those are really my major notes. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
A couple other things I forgot to mention. One, when we don't discuss in these meetings anything to do with benefits, that's calculated outside of the departments. They don't get to touch that at all. It's in the benefits department, so, and the other thing is, if you want to know the exact staffing in any department, it's pretty easy. The mayor's office, there aren't that many, but it's on page 272 in the budget book. Has all the positions by each division department. Any questions for the mayor's office?
I look confused, but it's not because of the mayor's office.
Oh, okay.
The page numbers for the digital version does not match by a lot.
That could be because the detail for each special revenue fund is online, but because it's so much, last year we made the decision to not include it in the printed. So if you go online, and the good thing about online is that you can kind of create your own budget book, but if you select all, it's going to give you each page, like a page for summer food program, and whereas in the book, you're just seeing the rolled up version, if I'm explaining that correctly.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, if you have any questions about the budget, Megan's been deeply involved in the budget since day one.
I figured you'd have an answer.
Any other questions? Nothing, the mayor's office or the budget as a total? Yes, Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I did have a question, not about the appropriations for the office of the mayor. I did have a question in regard, because I know we were doing general government tonight, and I had a question about the revenue line for parking. I was just going in order.
That's a separate area. It's gonna be addressed.
So do you want me to wait until we get to parking,
Yeah.
and then I can ask that question?
Yeah. We don't wanna ruin the thunder. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
All right, the next is so the Board of Aldermen is on page 33, but that's fairly straightforward and not a lot of changes, so they just submitted the memo, and the legal department, same thing. So the next item is the city clerk's office. Revenues are on page 35, appropriations on page 36.
Good evening, Dan Healy, City Clerk. So the biggest increase this year in my budget, all the aldermen are aware of, is the election pay. That was a resolution a few weeks ago. We increased it from a half-day, full-day, just general stipend to an hourly rate and a few other minor changes in there. We do have, we went from 3 elections last year to 2, and without that increase, that line item would have decreased a good amount. But that's the biggest increase, is paying the election workers kind of a fair rate. Another increase in the budget is election-related, the postage. We're gonna have a significant amount of absentee ballots anticipated for September and November. I'm not anticipating 2020 numbers, but because of the increased publicity around absentee ballots, I think that the numbers are they're gonna be high, not as high as 2020, somewhere in between 2016 and 2020. So I expect them to decrease a little bit from that election, but still be high enough to warrant an increase in that line item. There are a few other minor increases, just we want to get more supplies for the elections too. One of the big problems we have is with tables, not having enough tables at the polling locations. So each year in my budget, I'm planning on just putting in an amount just for some tables until we have a steady supply. So most of the increases are election related, and that's pretty much all I have.
Questions? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you.
Alderman Kelly?
Looked at me.
Right nationality, wrong.
Thank you. I actually noticed in your revenues that you're down about half for financial statement recordings. What's that about?
So the financial statements, I was going off of the actual, what we're recording. I'd have to look into what that specific line item.
There's just a big reduction, so I was wondering why, if we stopped doing it, or?
Yeah, I went off of the trending, but I can look into that line item.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. To that point, what is financing statement recordings? What is that? Can you detail that out, what that is?
I'm not entirely sure on that line item. I'd have to get back to you. All the other ones, I know what those go to. We don't manually input that revenue. That might be our UCC filings or received from the state. I'd have to look at the detail on that line item.
Okay. I'll follow
By
up.
the way, if there are any areas that the treasurer can assist on during the discussions as we go through, feel free. Continue, Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you. I just had a couple of comments. Thank you for calling out the 31% increase on the wages and elections, and just going back to the aldermanic page 33 on the book, 80% jump. That's a big jump. That really jumped out at me. So I appreciate you saying that and tying that back to the resolution that we passed a few weeks back. That's my only comment. Thanks.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you. I got a couple questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question, amusement device permits for revenue. You budgeted 10,000 last year, you're budgeting 10,000 this year, but we only collected 1,300 this year. So can you explain what that is and why do we think we're gonna get back up to 10,000? Because I don't think we're gonna hit it this year.
The amusement devices are games, I believe games of chance, pinball machines, and various devices like that across the city. The licensing for that starts, I believe, in January. So this is the, I'd have to check on that. I know that a lot of the locations that have these devices are starting to not have these devices. they're reporting to us that they're removing them. I believe it includes like pool tables and things like that. So some of these locations are removing the devices from the establishment, so the number.
Just out of
may start to
curiosity,
go down, yeah.
are you confident that there's none in places you don't know about, or?
It's very challenging because a lot of the places that do have them or would have them, they don't know if there's anything in place, and we end up finding out about them, and then we'll send them a letter or call them. And very rarely we go to the establishment, but that's only if, you know, if we really feel the need. I think we've only been once to a location.
Second question.
Sure.
The taxi and chauffeur licenses, that's another one that you're budgeting the same thing, but it seems to be way down. It doesn't seem like you're gonna get to even half of that this year. Do we know why that's so low?
If I could interject one thing, that spent to date is as April, and you can ask each one of the divisions, because some of the revenues don't come in until after April, between April and July 1st, so that's not a good indicator that they haven't spent as much as they should.
That's way down though.
So the taxi and
The
chauffeur,
revenue.
yeah, the taxi and chauffeur licenses are due annually by April 30th. So we have, I want to say 20 drivers that have come in, and then we have 3 companies in Nashua.
So you think it'll get back up to that?
That number, I'm pretty confident will be around the 3,000 that's
Okay.
budgeted.
It's the revenue that doesn't come in.
Yeah,
That's
that
what-
number
that's what
comes
we're
in.
talking about, yeah.
Sometimes the expenditures as well.
And then my last question is, I saw a comment here, department goals, expand voter outreach. What does that entail, and how does that fit into any cost of the budget at all? Like, how are you expanding voter outreach?
So that doesn't really, there's not a big cost in that. This coming week, Monday and Tuesday, we're going to be at the high schools during the lunch periods, Nashua South and Nashua North on each day, registering students. And we're going to also put out a little flyer requesting if they want to help at the polling location. So the schools and different events like that where we expect a lot of people will be registering, it doesn't make a lot of sense for the clerk's office to go to an event if we're only going to get 2 people to register to vote. We would just direct them to our office. But with the high schools, with it being the end of the year and most of the senior class being 18, I think we're going to have a high number that are registering on those 2 days.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Oh, Wilshire?
The dog license fees are up. I
Yes.
mean, that was 3 months ago, or a couple months ago. Just because a lot more people have dogs?
No, so the dog license revenue, over the last few years, we're not quite sure what residents have been receiving for notices. There were some that were quite a few years overdue. The deputy city clerk has really taken this project on to try to get everyone up to date. So we've been doing extra letters, extra phone calls, sending the animal control officer out if necessary. And we came up, the deputy clerk actually came up with a process of, monthly lists. And once it gets past the 30 or so days and we don't hear from these people that have new dogs, he turns it over to animal control, and then they start getting involved. So anyone that has a new dog that may not be aware of the process, we're getting them to come in and license. And some of these owners that haven't licensed in quite a few years, we're getting in to get everyone up to date. This year, we did 2 robocalls, 2 emails with anyone that had an email address, and we sent out a postcard to anyone that was left unregistered. Because the deadline technically to register a dog is April 30th. May is the grace period, but you'll be getting the warrant soon for a state-issued fine in June, so then that notice will be going out as well. But we've really been trying to get all the dog records up to date. I do anticipate that staying around the same going into the next year as we're kind of catching up. And I think part of that was due to COVID. People weren't licensing their dogs. They couldn't get into the vets to get their rabies appointment. So if you can't, the dog isn't current with the rabies, you can't license with the city. So it's kind of a backlog, which now is really been cleared up, yeah, or on the process of getting cleared up.
Follow up?
Yes, on civil forfeiture fees, you had budgeted 15 and they came in at the end of March at 30,000. So what's that? Why is that?
The civil forfeiture fee is the $25 fine, so we had more residents receive that fine than we anticipated. So it's the not licensing their dogs. I did lower it, not lower it, but not go as high as what we were collecting for revenue, because I'm hoping that the increased notices before the fact of the fine will make it so that that revenue decreases, which is a good thing in a way, because we're not penalizing, these residents aren't getting penalized, because that's a fine. So that's not something that they should be paying, they're paying that because they're late. So we kind of think with the more notice on the dogs and getting everyone current, that they won't incur that fine. So that number should slowly start to go down as people start paying on time.
Thank you.
What's that?
Yep.
Just a couple things. Do we need to take formal action as a Board of Aldermen to switch Ward 5 to the high school permanently? Or do you just do that on your own?
I would have to go back and review some of the material. It was to see what was done at the time. I know we switched it to that location.
Oh, we had to switch it because Maine Dunstable won't be available till another year from now. And because we're redoing that gym,
And it,
but everybody I've talked to loves the high school. Better parking, better traffic flow, everything. So,
yes, and I would agree with that from talking with the Ward 5 residents and the poll workers. I'd have to look at what was done. It is, I believe the RSA says that the selectmen come up with the polling place, or the governing body. I'd have to see the language on what we did at the time, because I know it wasn't originally intended to be the permanent polling location, so I'd have to see what the wording was on what we sent out, but I agree that that's the better location with the parking and everything.
I'm pretty sure we had legislation to do that. We'd have to double check. The other thing is, do you have runners for the gymnasiums where you do the voting? There are only a few schools, I think, that you're using now that may not have runners, because those gym floors are expensive to redo. So,
I'm not aware of, the city clerk's office I know doesn't have any runners. I don't know if the schools
I
have
think
them.
we had some made for fairgrounds, after we did Fairgrounds Middle School.
Okay, that might be in storage somewhere at fairgrounds. There's
That's
no-
definitely one gym that we need to protect.
Okay, yeah, there's nothing I know that I have in my supplies, either here or our off-site storage.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they still stayed at the school. The only other question I have is there any indication during this coming year that we're gonna be switching voting machines, and if so, is there any expense?
Yes, so on the new tabulators, so currently, there were two vendors that the state selected. One of them got they got their full approval, and that was Voting Works. That's not the current vendor that we use. They're not local. The other one that the Board of Aldermen approved, the ImageCast from LHS Associates out of Salem, will not be ready in time for September. It might be ready a few weeks prior, which the state won't let us use it for September if it's not ready any earlier. And if we can't use it in September, we can't use it in November. So some municipalities are switching to the Voting Works. My recommendation on that would be to stay with what we currently have. Voting Works, they're a newer company that I don't think if we will get the same support as our current vendor. So I've been in discussions with the current vendor on getting a few more of the AccuVotes that we currently use to have as backups, or to have two at each location. So if there is an issue with one, that we could use the other. And the age of the machines and our longtime loyalty to the vendor, I think we'll get them at a relatively cheap cost, if there's even a cost associated with the plan on getting by for these next two elections, September and November. And then the full approval should be happening sometime in the spring, and we'd be able to purchase them at that time. The vendor, again, is local. When I call, I can talk to the owner on the phone. He calls me back if he's not available. They've been the provider for Nashua since we've been using the AccuVotes. So I have a good relationship with them. I know the service we get with them. I've called them on election day, and they've been here in 30 minutes. So I would, even though it's going to be delayed, we're gonna have to get through these two elections, I would still stick with that vendor and be making the purchase sometime in the spring for the newer tabulators. But having the backup, another tabulator or two other additional tabulators at each polling location, or the larger ones, I think we'll be in pretty good shape.
Any other last questions? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. Dan, did you have any, for headcount in your department, did it stay the same, or did it go up or down?
It stayed the same, so we have 4 clerks at the window, and the deputy clerk and myself. And we've been fully staffed, just short of, a few weeks in between. Well, we've had one employee just transferred to a different department, and then in that interim interviewing. So we've been mostly fully staffed over the last year or two.
Okay, but your staffing, as far as the number of positions, has stayed the same?
It stayed the same.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next department that we're gonna discuss is the public library. Revenues are on page 167. Appropriations are on 167 as well.
Okay. Hello there, Linda LaFlamme. I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees. I'm here with Jen McCormick, our director. And we have, or she and her staff, I should say, have done their darndest to bring the budget in at the recommended increase, while also increasing some lines to handle some efficiencies, both energy efficiencies, such as changing out our fluorescent lights to LEDs, as well as staff efficiencies, such as swapping our barcodes to the back of the book, which has just got everybody excited. And we've also setting aside some money for consulting, for helping us with our renovation plans that you heard so much about, or the ad hoc committee, I should say, heard so much about the other night. But I will let Jen get into the details.
Sure. Jen McCormick, Library Director. Our fiscal year '25 budget came in at just almost exactly that 4% recommended amount. It maintains our current staffing levels and includes sufficient overtime for Sunday hours year-round. And just as an aside, I wanted to let this group know, and anyone watching, that beginning June 2nd, the library will be opening at noon on Sundays instead of 1 p.m. Coincidentally, opening day for the farmer's market, so win-win all around. We have included some monies for new software for products, including a full version of Office 365 and a potential increase in our annual maintenance contract with Cersei Dynex, which is the vendor that supplies our integrated library system. We're negotiating that new contract now, and that will be going to finance, hopefully, their first meeting in July. There is money included in equipment, 7,100, for carpet replacement in a couple of the public areas of the library. There's also funding in that line to, as Linda said, replace the fluorescent fixtures on the main floor of the library with LED fixtures, both for energy savings and better light quality. We did that in our garage and mechanical spaces last year, and we saw significant savings in electricity. So I'm hoping that we'll see equivalent savings with the upstairs project. As Linda referred to, we are moving the barcodes to the outside of the book, which sounds silly. It's a huge project, but it actually saves a lot on the life of the book. And more importantly, it improves the customer experience with our self-check kiosks. If you've got little kids or a walker or a cane, it's a lot easier to grab your book and just put it under that red light than try to handle the covers. We're also switching to a new label for spine labels, the one we've been using. The print fades, and we have staff spending an inordinate amount of time pulling books off the shelf, printing a new label, putting them back on. Not a great use of money. Print and media materials, we're leaving those budget lines the same. And we've also included in here, in the memberships line, money for membership in the Urban Libraries Council, which is a research group focused on the impact of library in city, on city economics, city prosperity, and the well-being of residents. It's an expensive membership. I would hope to split it maybe with the Friends of the Library. I think the data that we can get from that group will be really helpful in building our case for our renovation, and maybe give economic development a little bit of input on how important we are to the city, looking over at Liz. Those are really the highlights. I'm happy to answer questions. I'd like to get ahead of one question, which I will admit, I didn't look at the revenue section very closely until you all were asking questions. For fiscal year 24, year to date, you'll see $2,000 in income for photocopies. That is an anomaly. There were a few months when our contract with Conway had lapsed, so Conway serviced our public printers. They collected all the money, serviced the machines, and we would get a small kind of refund based on agreed upon amounts. We have new machines in a new company now, and they are doing a similar thing. They handle all of the service of the machines, they collect the money, and then we get, actually what we do is it reduces our lease payments on the printers themselves. So that $2,000 was during this brief 3-month period where the library was collecting the money from the machines ourselves. And thank you to whatever power you believe in, they didn't break down during that 3-month period, so there were no maintenance costs. So, happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One little quick comment. I don't know if you have seen John Oliver's recent library piece, and it really tells you that it's not indicative of just Nashua, the issues that libraries are having to try to stay afloat in this country. So I couldn't believe it when I saw it. It was just after you guys made your presentation on the repairs and stuff. And so it's really, it sounded like exactly like here and what our library does. So thank you for that, and thank you for bringing the budget forward.
Thank you.
Yes, Alderman Kelly?
No ukuleles this year?
Hmm.
I actually have one questions, but.
We do have ukulele.
I remember that from last year. So, thank you for your overview. Obviously, the library is such an important part of our city. I just missed, and it could have been me, you were talking about some of the improvements, for example, technology operations, 54428. Was that, can you just remind me, was that the software you rattled off at the beginning?
Let me center myself. Tech operations, yeah, that would be the Microsoft 365 license. So we're currently have a kind of an Office 365 Lite license. We're moving to the full license and migrating our Outlook, so all of our email over to that as well. We do get nonprofit pricing, but it is still not an inexpensive project.
Okay, and then my next question, if I could?
Follow up?
Thank you. You mentioned the membership in the urban libraries, which sounds like it would be very helpful. You said that you were hoping to split it with the Friends of the Library. Is half in your budget?
Half is in my budget,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. So the full membership is 6,000, which is a lot. You know, my American Library Association membership's like 300. So it's a big financial commitment. Haven't talked to the Friends too much about it. I want to feel more confident that it's worth that investment before I leave.
Follow up?
Follow up?
Do you anticipate that being an ongoing thing, or just because we're doing the design for now?
Hopefully, they're not listening, no. No, I'm hoping to time it so that we buy a 1-year, we buy a membership, get all the data we can possibly use, and then regrettably not renew.
That's heavy to cost, so I understand. Thank you.
Alderman Wiltshire?
Thank you. I think at the presentation you did for the ad hoc committee, there was some talk about a lending program.
Oh, the Library of Things?
Yes.
A library of things.
Yes. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can talk about that, and it's almost here. I've said that so many times. So the lending library will be, I think we're starting with a collection of 30 or 40 items that are really non-traditional. Starting with ukuleles and a telescope that we already have. We'll have a couple of LED projectors that you can borrow and take home. There'll be things like metal detectors, kid-sized and adult-sized that you can take home, video camera, professional microphone like you might use to record a podcast, or if you know you're a musical performer. I don't have the full list in front of me. It is a collection that will continue to develop. So we'll have selectors and a budget amount every year so we can keep adding based on customer input, with the acknowledgement that we are limited by the safety of the item to loan, our ability to store and maintain it, and how big it is. So we won't be, you know, we're not going to be Taylor Rental with rototillers. But we're trying to find that happy medium, really focusing on items that families or individuals might need once or twice in a year, but that are costly to invest in. So it's a way for communities, for our community, our city members to just share items with each other, share equipment with each other, and not spend the money.
So rototillers, I was thinking that before you said it. And you're probably not gonna lend out chainsaws either.
No.
Well, thank you for the information, appreciate it.
Other questions? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you very much. You may have covered this, but if you don't mind, I saw that there was an 87% increase in the other services line item, and then also a 47% increase in the equipment line item. I think you said something about carpet, but I just wanted to
Yep.
tie back to that.
Equipment is carpet,
Okay.
and other services, can you give me a number? Because I'm not sure what you're seeing.
Is that other contracted services?
It is
55699.
Yep.
55699. I was just looking
Yes,
at the.
so that, yeah,
Top of page
55699, that's other, so that is money, I'm speaking for Linda now. So that's money that the trustees asked me to include so that they could potentially hire someone to advise them on funding opportunities for the renovation, or help with the feasibility study or space assessment study.
Okay. Paul, please.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I was, as part of the budget are the expendable trust funds, which it's a sweet spot for me. I love them. They sit there. They have a lot of money in there. And I noticed that the library trustees oversee 11 trust funds. Some as low as $1,270 and one as high as $1.142 million. I didn't know if there are long-term discussions happening at the library trustee level on what to do with those funds and how to expend them. I mean, there's a lot of money that's sitting there.
There is, and many of them, however, have restrictions as to what they can be spent on. Believe me, if I could find a Lithuanian contractor to handle the renovation project, I would put the Zalonis Fund to him immediately. But unfortunately, that's all we can spend Zelonis on, is Lithuanian heritage projects. So while it looks like, for example, I know there's a lot in that one because it's a very hard one to find things to spend it on. So for example, that looks like a lot, but it is curtailed as to what we can do with it. But those that do have a large balance in them that are non-restricted, we certainly are looking at what could we do with them, what could we do with the income, how could we use that to the project, how could we balance trust funds with other contributions, and that's the sort of thing that it would be great to have a consultant who we would pay for out of other contracted services to kind of help us see how we can put the puzzle pieces together to make these projects. So certainly the trust funds are something we are looking at, but even if we zeroed out all of them and wrote one giant check, it wouldn't be enough to cover some of the repairs that we have to make, or all of the repairs that we have to make, I should say.
Just to follow up,
Yeah,
please.
follow up.
No, and I appreciate that, and I wasn't looking for taking that money to fund repairs. I was just asking if you have a strategic discussion around those trust funds, because there are sizable amounts in
Yes,
there.
yes.
Some that have restrictions, some that don't. Obviously, kind of the longer term vision of where those dollars could be spent to, improve the library even more.
And certainly they are in the sights for how can we leverage them to get what we need to do done for our renovation project. And we did leverage the trust funds to build out the new Chandler wing with all the meeting rooms, et cetera, downstairs. A lot of that was funded by trust funds. So they are, while it may not look like it, when you look at the balance sheet, they are definitely being spent.
Okay, very good, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
Alderman Sullivan took mine.
Okay. There are no other questions? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Now we're into general government, and the first one on the agenda is economic development. Appropriations are on page 53.
What?
Sorry if I hand these out.
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you.
We have to accept that in the record.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Liz Hannum, Director of Economic Development, for the record. I wanted to start with economic development before we head into parking. But I provided a little one-pager for you this afternoon. I think it's in the record now. So I won't go through all of that. That's kind of programming that we'd like to do with the existing budget. It's a little hard to read from the budget what we're actually gonna do based on the categories. So I provided a list of things here. I'll just highlight that we're, in addition to the traditional economic development, I've looked at the Imagine Nashua Master Plan, and added things like marketing and promotion and economic mobility, which was kind of the number one goal for economic development within that master plan. And on the back side of that, I've provided kind of a definition of what economic mobility means in case people don't quite understand. And I'll just give a quick, my quick understanding is helping people get out of survival mode so that they can contribute to the economy. Is kind of an overarching theme for that. The major changes that I've made here, there's a staffing change. So the Hunt building is actually under economic development currently. That will be moving to admin services, as will the staff person that is associated. And so I will have half of an position left in economic development. And then I will be working on building out the rest of that position through the Greater Nashua Revolving Loan Fund, using the interest from those loans to pay for a new position in economic mobility. So they'll be kind of working on those programmatic aspects of the economic mobility. The two kind of major changes that happen in the budget, along with the Hunt building going to admin services, the subscription fees, or not subscription fees, fees associated with the mill-yard dues, those have also gone to admin services as part of our kind of land ownership buildings kind of maintenance. So I've reduced the budget there, but it will be transferred into admin services. And then there's a pretty huge increase in that other contracted services line that is associated with the barrier placement for the extended outdoor dining project. So that has always come from the escrow account. We've moved it into our operating budget this year, and that will include pickup in September, as well as a drop off and pickup in the following year. The program has not been extended yet, but it will potentially be. So I wanted to make sure that I was ready for that in case it happened. So those are the big changes. And then I added about $3,000 to our marketing budget. So that was the big change.
Questions? Yes, Alderman Kelly?
Thank you. So on your list of things you're going to do, there are additional events, but I don't see like a line item Yeah, so we've associated with that.
It's mostly in contracted services, because we'll be paying for bands and things like that through that.
So that
So it-
157 is,
Yeah, so it is, I think I was at 4.5% increase, except for the barriers. And so that, in that 4% increase, in various line items is where we've slotted in events. So there's, I think there's 4.5% increase, other than the increase in the barriers, the decrease in the mill-yard dues, and that little marketing budget. So it's all included in the,
is it possible to get more of a breakdown of what those other
Yes.
contracted services are? It's
yes,
not just one of them.
yeah,
That would be great.
Yep.
I can do that. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So talk to me about this $3,000. So we've added more for marketing. And so can you tell me more about that and what that $3,000 is going to get us for economic development?
yeah. So right now we're working with a marketing firm to create a marketing campaign that will help bring in more dollars, more developers, more businesses. And so we expect that to be kind of completed within the December, January timeframe. So I'm kind of giving myself double the budget. Right now I think I'm at $3,000 this year, so I'm increasing it to $7,000, I believe. I'll have to double check here. Let me see.
Yes.
Yep, 7,000. So I went from 3,000 this year to 7,000, so it's actually 4,000, sorry, difference. So that I can begin to execute some of the projects that they create within that campaign from the marketing firm. So that will give me 3 to 4 months of execution before I then start on the 26 budget. So it'll give me some time to.
Hello?
Sure. So is that money for this person, is it a salary to this person to help you, or is it for materials, or?
Yeah, it's gonna be for materials, for collateral, kind of like printing,
So it's purely kind of hard costs, not soft costs or graphic design or any of that stuff. So it's just hard costs.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Alderman Wiltshire?
Thank you. Under dues and memberships, the 24 budget had 26,000 and you only have $3,040.
Yes, so that's where the milliard dues went away. So we reduced the budget by that much. The dues and memberships that are still there, the 3,000, are for things like downtown association, national association fees. So that we've kept our existing memberships with the exception of the milliard dues, which has moved to admin services.
Thank you.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you very much. Going back to the head count in your department, I'm hoping you can recap that, because I'm just looking at last year. You had, well, I don't want to say you, I think it was, you had the full year, didn't you?
Yep, yep,
Okay.
I just hit a year last week.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you had 2 full-time positions, and looking under wages full-time, 146, 257, you're losing half of a person, but your wages are going up.
So the wages will stay the same within the department, and then the other half that where we're going up is coming from the revolving loan fund, so it won't hit the general fund at all. And right now, the Hunt building is also under economic development, so that will then go to admin services, so I won't have that. So I'm basically, right now I have 2 FTE, and I will end up with 2 FTE at the same rate to the general fee, or general fund. I don't know if that made sense.
I'm sorry, but it didn't.
Okay,
Because
so.
only, could I just clarify?
Yes.
Because you mentioned that your salaries and wages were gonna stay the same. They're not staying the same, they're going up by almost
In-
$20,000.
Yes.
But you're losing half a head.
Right, so in my department, we have to include the Hunt building in that as well. So right now, the Hunt building is also in my department. So
Is that level staffed?
it is, but it's moving to a different department. Should,
I think, okay.
Director Cummings, would you like to clarify? This is your plan. I love it.
In the staffing, and under economic development on page 272, there's 3 positions.
In
A
270,
full-time, a time and a half, and a half-time, so you get three full-time equivalents.
well, maybe I didn't look at the total line.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add that part of what you're seeing is also the contractual obligations relative to increases in salary from one fiscal year to the next.
Yeah,
I'm right, it's 1.5.
Yep, so we're currently at 1.5, and then the Hunt building would be the other 0.5. So we're still technically gonna be 1.5 within economic development, and then we'll add the 0.5, instead of at the Hunt building, it will come from the revolving loan fund. So the increase in salary is just the regular salary increase year over year.
Okay, I won't waste any more time. I'll have to dig on my own.
I can make you a flow chart if you need one.
That would be great.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I can definitely do that.
all set, Alderman Sullivan?
Yeah.
Yeah, Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So so the person that's at the Hunt building now will move over to admin services,
Yes.
but you'll still have a space in your organization for an FTE that you haven't hired yet, Is that-
Part-time
part-time.
will be left when the person moves over to admin services.
And in this budget currently, it's already assuming that that person's moving over, is that?
Yes, yep,
And the rest of the wages going up has to do with benefits and salaries going up on a contractual basis year to year.
Correct. And then I'm gonna create a whole, or I'm gonna make that position whole using the revolving loan fund interest, that will not touch the general fund.
So that will not show up in the budget.
Correct.
Because that part is gonna make that person a full-time employee.
Correct,
But the money's
yeah.
coming from somewhere else to do that.
Right,
That person has not been hired yet, that's a future hire, is that?
correct, yep.
So when we look at the Hunt building, it'll answer questions that I had for Treasurer Griffin. Those numbers went to 0 in some places, and I couldn't figure out what happened there. It's because it went to economic development, so, all right.
Yep.
Yes, Alderman Senate.
Thank you. I just want to ask sort of, I guess, a clarifying question. You had talked about the increase in other contracted services for implementing the extended dining program. We have a fee structure for the folks that utilize that. Is that coming your way?
No, it goes into the general fund as
Okay.
revenue, so it doesn't,
All right, so that would
Contribute.
that would be a revenue line on the general fund then.
Jill Stansfield, parking manager, if I may. It actually comes into the parking department,
Oh.
one of the parking department revenue lines.
Well, I guess that makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure that that's.
We're part of the general fund.
Right.
Still, so.
Yeah, so the.
But under that
Probably that
umbrella, it's coming
Yes.
into the
Yeah.
parking
Yes.
division. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for economic development before we go to parking? Seeing none? Okay.
Okay, so, I have parking manager Jill Stansfield here with me. She passed out, a little one-pager for this department as well. We are gonna do a lot of changes in this department this year, so you'll see quite a bit. We, as you know, a few months ago, adopted the downtown parking study as a planning document. And so we have started to implement those changes in this fiscal year budget. We had originally planned to do an enterprise fund initially, but decided that that wasn't, we weren't quite ready for that. So we've backed off on our kind of charge forward and spread out the changes over multiple years so that we're not impacting the general fund so heavily, and we're not impacting or negatively impacting the public in large fee changes and fine changes as well.
Can I just make a point of order? This is on page 48 and 49 for parking, so it's back, going back in the book.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, you'll see kind of 3 major areas. We have added a new position, which would be a parking supervisor. That will help us move through our kind of backlog of, appeals and
Yes.
day-to-day operations. It will also give Jill some time off. She's on call 24/7 right now. We will, also, we have 8 part-time positions, that are in enforcement. And we have not been able to staff that many part-time positions. So we're trying, a recommendation from the parking study, that we move some of those positions. So we took 6 of the 8 and moved them into full-time positions. So, there isn't an increase in that except for the benefits and fringe that have to go along with a full-time position that don't go along with a part-time position. So you will see increases in that line item, but that's because it's moving to full-time. And so hopefully we can get those staffed.
So all those increases in revenue are driven by the new price, the costs.
Yeah,
that we passed.
and we did, we saw on Tuesday night, the first reading for the fees and fines increases went through. So we'll see what happens with that in terms of what the committee and the board wants to do with that. But the recommendation is to do them in conjuncture, so that we not only have increased expenses, but we also have increased revenue that can help not only change behavior or curb behavior, but also kind of keep up with the market rate and close that gap. So we're, one, not undercutting private ownership, and two, that we're pushing people to park the way that we'd like to see them park.
So one's gonna offset the other, and parking control will be increased.
Yes, yes, and we really also hope to use this year to justify the enterprise fund, moving towards an enterprise fund and pulling all of those expenses out of the general fund going forward. So that, but we want to take this year to implement and to execute and see if, make sure that it supports itself going forward.
Okay. Any additional questions on parking? Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you. Okay, so parking enforcement, the reason behind the revenue lift is we're gonna put higher fines in place. That legislation's in motion. Can you explain the rise in revenue on parking operations, please?
Would you like to?
Sure. Jill Stanfield, parking manager. On the operations side of the house, that includes our lease parking fees and our meter fees. Those are the two big pots in that area. It also has the outdoor dining permit fees in there, as well as the overnight parking permit fees.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Are we seeing, we'll be seeing the increase in parking fees from the new garage under the School Street building?
Yep, that will also be.
And do we get the additional fees from the spaces that we lease the residents in the garage?
Yes, that is all on the operations side as well.
Alderman Debo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a distinction on one thing where it says outdoor dining permits, and because it's a small amount. Those are for places outside of Main Street, correct? And not part of the, because that would only be 4 spots if it was the $500.
So, yeah, I'm not sure why that is that way, but it should probably be a little bit more than that, because I believe they are $500 per.
But is that for some reason I thought those were like places like in other areas that have permits to do some outdoor dining.
So that those are, but those go through community development.
Okay, so
And not parking.
I guess what is that? Because, I mean, there's more than 4 restaurants that are paid, right?
Yeah, so, I think that's what we collected, I think, 2 years ago, and so that we just used the same number. But we have seen a lot more this year.
So I assume, just because we just dropped the barriers, that $1,000 that I see that we've collected so far this year is going to go up, because we just literally put down the
Yes,
barriers. Okay.
correct.
I just don't want people to freak out and go, oh, we got all these barriers and yet there's no money coming in, when that's not necessarily the case. Because I know we'll have more than 4 restaurants that hopefully.
Yes, yeah,
take
so
a-
everyone has paid currently, so
Okay.
I think we should have, that's 18 spots, I think.
Okay, so
So at $500.
shouldn't that
apiece.
revenue then maybe be higher? And when we're expecting to probably look at that again, if we do it again, to maybe increase that a little bit. So I mean,
Yes,
having only 2,000 in there, we know we're gonna get probably a lot more than that.
yes, yep, so we can definitely make that change.
Okay. And that might be a motion, right? Or is that later on in the process? Okay. And do we have to make a motion to put this in, or we're all set?
We'll just make it part of the minutes.
Okay, great.
Handout.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate my question around the contracted services, because I'd be interested in looking at how much we're getting in revenue versus how much it's costing us to drop those barriers. So as we look at that program coming forward, we can try to rectify that.
Alderman Sullivan.
If you'll indulge me, can we go backwards to economic development while she's still here?
He hasn't left yet.
I know, I was in brain lock on that full-time employee thing. The beach ball was going around in my head. All right, not asking for details of the rail study. However, we did pay for one, and I noticed under the handout that you sent that falls under your purview.
Yep.
I'm just asking when we might expect to have those results of that study.
Yeah, I think we've had, right now we're at a place where we're starting to talk with partner organizations, so we should have results of that a very initial go, no-go study within the next few months here. And then the next kind of step along the way, which is what we're working on, and we've put in several grant opportunities to try to pay for that, would be nearly $2 million worth of construction and design work. So to get us to a place where we could actually apply for construction money. So the $75,000 that we've spent this year is almost complete. But we've kind of been in a little bit of a holding pattern because of schedules and trying to meet with MBTA and MassDOT and CSX and New Hampshire DOT, and so that it's just been schedule changes.
Okay. So a few
But
months.
we should have results of that fairly soon here.
Follow-up, please?
Follow-up, good.
Thank you. The marketing. The marketing that I took the survey.
Oh, nice, great.
And so that we paid for in fiscal year '24, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so the idea around the marketing funds that you put in there, 7,000, that's to implement the ideas?
Yes.
Okay.
So the majority of it will actually be within that fiscal year '24, kind of the starting point, and this will give me kind of a running room to get to fiscal year '26 to implement it in full.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So we'll have a few months in there that will not be under the current contract.
Okay.
And we'll be gearing up towards a much larger implementation plan.
Okay. All right, yeah, just, I know a little bit about marketing, and that seemed to be a pretty small budget.
But it's double what I have now. It's not enough.
$7,000 goes fast in that,
Yes.
silo.
Yes.
If they were hiring you, yes.
Well, no.
I'm a marketing firm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's 1 hour fee. Anyway, that's it, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So the next is Public Health and Community Services. It starts on page 138.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Good
Director
evening, Chair.
Bagley.
Yes, good evening, Chair. Bobby Bagley, Chief Public Health Official and Director for our City of Nashua's Public Health Department. And this evening, we're going to present our budgets from the 3 different departments. I do have with me our Chief Public Health Nurse, Kim Bernard, and Heidi Peak is the health officer who is joining us online. And we're going to go over each of the department budgets based on mostly the changes. So I'm going to start first with community services. And what you will see in community services under the appropriation details is that there has been a huge increase in our wages, full-time under salary and wages line. That is because of the addition of 5 positions that are being requested to be covered by the city. This will be 4 community health workers and a new position that was created this year, the housing services officer, due to the need of a point person to help us with the housing insufficiency that we're seeing in the community with the increase in unhoused and dealing with the encampments. And so we felt that those positions were vitally important. The other line changes under the appropriations are somewhat small, some ups and downs under the property services line, down a little bit under the water, under other services, dues and memberships 55,200. You can see that that's gone down just a little bit. 55,400 conference and seminars has gone down. The printing services, 55,600 has gone down, and then the other contracted services has gone up just a little bit. For the most part, under community services, because we do have the opportunity of having support from grant funds from our state, as well as some other philanthropic organizations, where you see those decreases in some of the, those other services lines, I'm able to braid some funding from some of those grants to help support that. And then under 61 supplies and materials, again, you see a number of decreases in small amounts, again, because of the leveraging from some of the grants. So the grants, the reason for the increases in the positions is because the grant funding that came through COVID will now be going away. But those positions are not new positions that we're creating, other than that housing services officer position that was needed. The grant fundings don't necessarily provide enough of the funding to cover the staff, but for the actual work that needs to be implemented, the reason why some of these lines can go down is because some of that funding will cover those costs. And then you'll see under other expenses, where we had the $20,000 under 68320 for the CHINS, or the community intervention. That was to cover the youth council, which is now, services are being delivered under other organizations to meet the services that are needed in the community. And that's pretty much it for community services, so not too much change other than the addition of those very much needed staff positions.
Okay, questions, Alderman Wilshire?
Yes, thank you. The 4 new positions, because one of them, it's new, but it's already filled. What are those 4 positions exactly?
So those, the other 4 positions are the community health worker positions, but they are positions that we've had for at least starting in 2020. So starting in, the first 2 community health workers were paid for by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, which is a philanthropic organization in response to the immediate need that we needed for COVID. And so there was a governor's report that came out that said that we needed to have this workforce to support our public health infrastructure. And so they paid for those individuals for the first 2 years. And then some state funding came through to support the hiring of an additional 6 community health workers. So in total, there were 8 that were under community services. And so the city, I'm looking for the city to pick up 4 of those, and the state will continue to cover the other 2 of the other positions. And then I've been writing for some other grants to get one of the other positions covered, which I've actually gotten the funding announcement of that this week. And so we'll be able to fully fund those 7 positions and continue the work that we've been doing in the community.
Follow-up?
I also have another question on the youth council and the services. What changed?
So with the youth council, they needed to have continued support for the organization to continue to do the service delivery, and some of the financial needs that they had, they weren't being met to keep the organization running separately. And so those services are now going to be delivered by different organizations, and some of them are going to be taken by the school.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Your next area?
All right?
Oh, I did have one question, though. On one of your items, it was, other contracted services, did you mention that? Went from 300 to 2,300?
Oh, sorry, I skipped over that one. The other contracted services line, prior to 2024, we had that at 2,000. But again, we had quite a bit of grant funding, so that was covered under some of the grants. So the recommendation was to bring that back to the 2,000, bring the additional 2,000 back to that to cover or help to support covering Dr. Granick, who provides, he's our medical director, so he provides oversight over our community health department, as well as some of the things that we do under community services. And so we need to make sure that we can cover his costs between community services and community health.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So, community health?
Other questions?
Do you have a question before that, Alderman Kelly?
I did. I don't know if you want to tell me overall as a division or each individual department, but I didn't hear you mention if you were at the 4% increase or more.
We are over the 4% increase.
Do you know how much?
I don't, but I can get that information for you.
I can
and
do the
get that
math.
back to you.
Just wondering if you knew off the top of your head.
Okay,
Thank you.
anyone else? Okay. Kim?
All right. Good evening, Kim Bernard, Chief Public Health Nurse, Division of Public Health and Community Services. I just want to skip over to page 14 real quick, just to let you know that in your budget book, your budget binder, under services, there have been some changes, and they were fixed on the online version, but the book that you have may not have the corrections, so I just wanted to let you know.
Page numbers are different too, so.
I'm sorry?
Page
Oh, the
numbers
pages are
from the
different?
online and our books are
Okay,
different.
I printed it online, so this was 14. It's actually under services, so it's at the end of the budget expenditures, right above objectives. So there's just a few things that are different on there,
Yeah.
and to let you know. All right,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
for community health, under revenue, we, as of 3/31, our predicted revenue has exceeded our budget by 13%. A few things to note on here is that our immunizations, the regular and the flu should be combined, and that'll be noted on our next budget year as well. We'll get rid of the differentiating of those and just have one under immunizations. Event fees is at 0 because we have not had an outside conference event since the pandemic, and we don't plan to. We've been having more webinars, so that's why that's at 0. Our prescription drug rebates program is going really well. We had $10,000 in on our first year, which was our 2024 budget. And so far, as of 3/31, we have received 31,000, a little over 31,000. So that is good. So, and then Medicare reimbursements, those are still in progress. And we plan, the reason why we have it still at 10 grand is that we're planning on being able to submit to Medicaid as well. Our application is in progress right now. So our goal is to capture more revenue through Medicare, Medicaid, and we also have implemented being able to take credit cards and debit cards for just the administrative fees that we ask for. And prior, we were only taking cash, so we are seeing a difference in that already with the increased ways to pay. And just to note, we do not turn away anyone for inability to pay those fees. So, let's see, so we're gonna go over to our expenditures. Under salaries and wages, you'll see the biggest increase, 41% increase in salaries. And that is reflecting both the increases that are coming with our cost of living and merit increases, as well as absorbing 2 current full-time RNs that we have under grant funding currently. And this is to meet the population needs through our services so that we can sustain our workforce. So you'll see there that increase under both salaries and wages and fringe benefits. All of our other line items under property services and other services, supplies and materials, you'll see some mostly decreases. We have a 13% decrease under property services. We have about a 1% decrease under other services, supplies and materials, a 7% decrease overall. And then on the next page, under other expenses, we have the program expenses line, the 30,000. That is reflective of 75% of the estimated revenue that we will have through our prescription program that we have. So you'll see our budget, we're asking at the bottom there, which is an increase. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. Just for clarification, I'm
Sure.
seeing that your budget year over year is going up 45%?
From last year to this year?
Yes, and the main driver in that, just so I have it clear, these are 2 nurses. So we're not technically adding headcount in the department. So the number of people is gonna remain the same. But a year ago, they were being paid by grant money
Correct.
from federal funds. And now we now have to absorb these two positions and pay for them ourselves. Am I characterizing that correctly?
You're summarizing. So historically, the city has had 7 RNs funded under the city budget.
Okay.
And that's where we're at now.
Okay.
Actually, we're at 6 because one of our part-time nurses is under the HUD grant.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All set?
Yep.
All in Wilshire?
Forgot my question. Oh, no, I remember. The prescription drug thing, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we have a contract with Avita, which is a pharmacy. And what happens there is through our HIV PrEP program, we are able to have folks sign up for our HIV PrEP program. They can get their prescriptions through Avita, and Avita will do all the billing for us. They bill the insurances, and then the difference minus their fees are returned to our program, so that all those funds go back into our programming. So that helps folks that, may not be able to afford either the cost of lab work or the cost of, the prescriptions themselves. So it offsets and allows us to have this program, which we're, I think, close to about 40 clients so far within this program in the past year. So it's really been a great partnership so far.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other, Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify the staffing, of the nurses. So, and the reason why is because to equate it to another department, education, for instance, they received money for COVID, they were able to hire people, and now they're letting some people go. So what you were saying is prior to getting this grant money, we had 7 nurses. We got some grant money that helped pay for some of those, and now we still gonna take that, or no, that's not the case?
So the grant money that we have is not related to COVID. We had one COVID grant for our department, but that was not including salary. So the money that we get, we have most of our grants are federal grants that we get through the state. And what happens is we get the same amount every year. So it doesn't take into account the cost of living increases, the merit increases. So that's where also we're seeing a pretty significant increase in salary this year due to both the merit and the cost of living increase as well.
Okay, so we always had 7, but we had some grants paying for some of it. Now because of the cost of everything going up, it's costing us more than it would in the past because of that. We're not adding staff that the grants went away and then all of a sudden we're gonna absorb that. It was always that way, right?
We are fully staffed. We've been fully staffed the past 6 months. We've been fully staffed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Senate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. I wanted to clarify on the immunization revenue lines.
Sure.
You had mentioned that they should be combined now, or they would be combined going forward, is that correct?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, because it looks like under our immunizations flu line, that it looks like that we've only received $15. That's our fee for a flu vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happened was it wasn't differentiated between our regular immunizations and our flu immunizations, so that should all be one number.
So so what you're saying is that flu fees are probably built into that
Yes.
5083
Yes.
on the regular line.
Exactly.
All right.
Yes.
I guess just for further clarification then, it looks like we're going from 11,300 anticipated revenue on that to 5,000 combined. Is that correct?
Correct.
What do you suppose would be the cause of the drop off? Like, is that just a decrease in pandemic related immunizations, or?
It could be. I mean, there's many reasons why. Sometimes, like I had mentioned prior, we don't turn away anyone for an inability to pay as well.
Yeah.
So we charge, our fees are, we charge a $10 fee for folks that are coming in for either 1 or more vaccinations. For flu, it's a separate $15 fee. And that's something that went through the Board of Aldermen years ago. I don't know why it's that number. It's just that's what was passed years ago. So I'm not quite sure you know, how it will be next year. It varies from year to year as far as what we will get for our revenue as far as that goes.
Great, well, thank you for that
You're
clarification.
very welcome.
Other questions? I'm assuming your Medicare is conservative, because I remember when I was chair of budget in the school department, they always kept it very conservative because they were never sure how much Medicare was going to give them. But every year it was higher than they projected, so I'm assuming this is a conservative number.
Yes, we're starting off with submitting just for flu for Medicare to see, because we are new with Medicare and Medicaid as well, and we don't have a billing person. So we are training ourselves in all there is to know about Medicare and Medicaid. So we're working together on that, and we just have used this 10,000 as, you know, a goal. And as we get our Medicaid reimbursement in place, we'll be able to really to submit for many of the services that we offer, not only through nursing, our community health workers, not only in community health, but in community services as well, our nurse practitioners in our clinics, so, and our outreach services will be able to bill Medicaid a lot more than we probably can Medicare at this point, so.
Any other questions? Thank you we got one more area.
Thank you.
Environmental health, Heidi?
Good evening, thank you. Heidi Pete-Kokoka, Nashua's Health Officer. If I sound funny, just let me know. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna start with environmental revenue and explain a couple of things real quickly. And my pages, I can't refer to the page number, so
149.
I guess, okay, yours is 149, mine is 29. Pool and spa licenses, those licenses expire at the end of April, but a lot of those management companies do not pay for their pools until it's the season. So those are a little late to come in. We've been getting those in steadily since the 3/31 date. Food service licenses, I'm confident that we're going to make 175 this year. Solid waste licenses, those expire at the end of June, and we see that little increase because we had some additional people come in. And then septic licenses are driven by the real estate market, and the rest are pretty straightforward. And miscellaneous revenue, we keep that at 25 because we really only charge that for making copies. And most people don't want paper copies anymore. So we will adjust that as necessary. And for our appropriations, I'll go over the increases. We've had 2 changes in 2 salaries. We have a small department, 6 people. One person is getting his credentials to become an environmental health specialist too. And then we've changed one position. We've increased the duties so that there are some division-wide duties in that position. And so you'll see that reflected there along with the cost of living increases. We increased our overtime to $5,000, and that's really there as a buffer in case we need it. If we have a lot of overnight emergencies or complex events that need inspecting, we can go through that pretty quickly. But I'm comfortable with $5,000. And then I'm going to skip down to changes. And if anyone is not familiar, actually, let me back up again. Under number 53, professional technical services, the $7,350 is for mosquito surveillance. We that was the same as last year, and we typically expend that just for that, and don't expect that it will go up this year. And then I will jump down to, quick explanation, under mileage reimbursements, we overspent a little bit, but that was when we were down a vehicle. And we've now 2 e-vehicles, and we're very appreciative of those. We've increased postage and delivery nominally. One of the things that we found is that when most people are paying their license fees online now, and so we end up mailing out licenses pretty regularly. Protective clothing, like everything, all of our items have gone up a little bit, the cost for these items. So we've just increased that by $100, and those are the changes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? Alderman Sullivan.
Thanks. I've got to go back to head count. On community services, so I'm going backwards again. I have up here, I have the fiscal '24 budget tabbed, and then I have this year's proposed budget. I'm seeing the head count in 2024 for community services at 11, and this year it's at 8. It's at 3 fewer people. What happened?
So the number of staff is actually the same. So the 11 that are listed include those that are also grant funded. The 8 that are here are those that will be fully funded under the city.
So last year you just included the ones that were grant funded?
All of the staff was listed across all the budgets last year.
Okay.
Right, so last year it actually looked like all of a sudden we had all this new staff, because in the budget book, we included all of the staff that are in the department, even if they were, whether they were grant funded or not.
Okay.
So the 8 that are listed here will be 8 under the city budget.
Okay.
There's a total
But you
of.
still have 11.
I have 13.
You have 13.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so I'm not going crazy.
No.
All right. And the
Devo?
same, and then the same for your department as well?
For my department?
Yeah, because your head count went
Yes.
down too.
Yes.
Same,
the same.
same number, 11 to 8.
Right, so, because again.
We're not including all.
We included all of the staff in the entire division, whether they were grant funded or not, so that the city and our alderman could see what the total number of staff were in the entire division.
Okay. Okay. Yep, thank you.
Devo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, going back to that, you have 11, we show 8 here because 3 are grant funded, just right. Are the benefits for those people also grant funded, or are the benefits, do they get benefits? Is it in here?
So just for clarification, you're asking about the staff that are funded by the grants.
Yeah.
They're totally funded by the grants. Their
Everything,
salaries,
okay.
their benefits.
Gotcha.
And so when we have our cost increase for cost of living and for the merit increases, all of that's covered under the grants.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So, Alderman Tebow, do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table R 24-057.
Motion on the floor is to table the budget till the next budget meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. R 24-057 is on the table. New business ordinances?
There is none.
Tabled in committee,
None.
nothing. General discussion?
Just a minute, Mr. Chair, there's a public comment period.
No, We're not doing public comment during these budget hearings.
Mr. Chairman, it's an ordinance that says you cannot waive an ordinance in this committee. If you want to change the ordinance, you have to make a resolution, your own ordinance that you passed in 2020. Ordinance number 20009, and I suggest any of you who have a PC look up LRO 5.9. You have no authority in this committee. You can recommend to the full board will have to pass a change to an ordinance procedure to eliminate my right to address this committee in public comment at the end of your committee meeting. Why not?
We've asked, have other committees that don't do it at the end, and we have asked the Corporation Council, and we were told we could do this, so.
You have an ordinance, sir. You have an ordinance, and you cannot waive that ordinance.
Point of order, can we
Yes.
let him talk for 3 minutes? For tonight?
Go ahead.
I mean, we had public comment at the beginning, he wasn't here.
But it's on it says on the agenda that there is public comment at the end. So
But
we
tonight, you
we
can
need
go ahead
to-
and speak.
We need to adjust it.
Okay. There's been a consistent attempt by this board and earlier boards to start to limit the public comment. I don't appreciate it. Now, what I wanted to say is that in looking at all these little numbers, you tend to get into the weeds. I've been on the budget committee for many years myself. You tend to get into the weeds. And what you lose track of is the big picture. Now, in the few minutes I have here, here's the big picture. If you look at that ordinance, or you look at your book, you'll see that the increase in the budget between last year and this year, that's a total budget, is $44 million. That's the largest in the 30 years I've been tracking the Board of Aldermen. $44 million. Now, that's a 10.7% increase since last year. But it says on page 2 that the budget is $4 million below the cap. How is that possible? How is that possible? It's possible because in the spending cap calculation, the supplemental budget is added. Now, you don't even have the spending calculation in your ordinance. It was in there last year, and this president didn't even insist on having it. The spending cap calculation I have obtained today from CFO Griffin. And within that spending cap, there's an item called supplemental appropriation. That's appropriations after the budget that you're debating, that you're going to be analyzing, that you're going to be voting on. That's beyond that. That's outside that. That comes up during the year as a supplemental appropriation. In this budget, it says that this year, 2024, that amounted to $24.7 million. I've never heard of supplemental appropriations anywhere near $4.7 million. And 20 years ago or so, there were never supplemental budgets. You kept in the budget you approved. What the supplemental budget does is recognize that you're going over budget. Instead of cutting, what you do is you just authorize supplemental funding. I won't go into details, because you probably have to go to court on this. But the fund balance, that's the city's savings account, has been robbed by about $10.6 million by transferring from the fund balance to the operating budget, $10.6 million. He did that recently with R2412, R2413, R2414, and nobody cared. Nobody said a thing. It says the current fund balance is 22 or 21.5 million. They said that for every resolution, because every resolution had to get passed. It all passed the same evening. So how much is left in your fund balance? How much is left in your savings account for the rainy day? Nobody cares.
Time's up.
Why cheat?
Time is up.
Well, the city.
We let you
board-
speak for 3 minutes. Time is up.
Mr. Chairman, you can spend a lot of time in the witness chair.
She's already had her chance to speak once.
Go ahead.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I'll be under 3 minutes, but I would like you to check with your Corporation Counsel office regarding NRO 5-9, which speaks to standing committees. The first standing committee listed is the Budget Review Committee, 1A. And then if you look at 514, Order of Business, it says all committees of the board under 9A are to follow ordinance O-20-009 for public comment, which is a period at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. And that ordinance O-20-009 is not updated. I did write to Dan Haley a few weeks ago, because remember, you updated your public comment ordinance specifying vulgar language or whatever in 2022, and for some reason that has not been put into the E-code on the website. So you need to check on that. But even with that change of language, the ordinance did not change relative to a public comment at the beginning and a public comment at the end. So I would like you to be able to come to us and explain to us why Corporation Counsel stated that you don't have to follow the ordinance. Other committees do not. Committees that are not standing committees of the Board of Aldermen, and we have, what, another 50 of those, they have the right to vote individually as a board as to whether they want to have public comment or not, and many of them choose not to. However, the policy in the ordinance applies to the Board of Aldermen and its standing committees, and I think you should have public comment at the beginning and at the end. Thank you.
We have a motion?
We
Not
have
yet.
general discussion and remarks before.
Remarks by Alderman.
I thought we already said that.
No, we
Mark
said general
Wilder.
discussion. We said general discussion.
All right. Alderman Seawood?
Thank you. I mean, I think maybe that's something to look at in the future, of making the budget review committee, when we're in budget season, to have one public comment, because it really is a working session. We have a huge session at the end where public can come and speak a lot of times on the budget, so it's not like we're not withholding people, it's just these are working sessions where we're trying to get information, and some of them can last quite long. People can come to the next one and speak in the beginning of it, and like I said, we have one at the school where people speak over and over again. We have the ghost of spending cap past coming in here and just going over and over again, the same stuff we hear every year. We're trying to get something done here, and, we can continue to be rated very highly in this country for financial management of the city. And so I don't think we're doing anything wrong, and I don't think we have been. I think we do a good job. I think we are trying to make a tight budget for this year, like we have in the last couple, and I think we do a good job, so.
Alderwoman Kelly?
Thank you. I actually pulled up the ordinance while they were giving their public comments. I think we should flag legal, because it does say there's one at the beginning and the end, and they are time constrained. So I'm not usually for shutting down conversation from the public, and I would like to, I'd like to see it restored. I mean, it is a lot of work. We signed up to be in the budget committee, but it's important to hear from the public.
Anyone else? Okay.
Now I can do it. All right, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:53.
I thought,